This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your hosts, Radio Joe Hughes and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Hey, and welcome to IAQ Radio Plus. It's episode 684, and this week we welcome Andre Desjarlais and Michael Lubliner to talk about the Oak Ridge National Laboratory and their new Building Science Advisor tool for energy efficient and moisture durable building envelope solutions. Let's thank our sponsors before we get started. And don't forget, they're the reason we continue doing the show. And also check out afterthoughts.iaqradio.com, sponsored by First On Site, where we continue the discussion after the show. Our marquee sponsor is First On Site at firstonsite.com. Our association sponsors are the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists, ACGIH.org, the American Industrial Hygiene Association, AIHA.org, the Cleaning Industry Research Institute, CIRI Science.org, the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, IICRC.org. Industry sponsors are AEML Laboratories, AEMLINC.com, Particles Plus, ParticlesPlus.com, TSI Inc., TSI.com, Sunbelt Rentals, SunbeltRentals.com, April Air, April, AIRE.com, Healthy Indoors Magazine, HealthyIndoors.com.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio Trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnick@cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to report that John Lapotiere of Florida IAQ Solutions in Winter Springs, Florida, was first to identify 1922 as the year that Carl Munters and Baltzar Platten filed a patent application in the U.S. for the technology used in a continuously operating refrigerator, which can be made without any moving parts. The IAQ Radio Trivia question for today, December 16, 2022, has been sponsored by TSI Inc., an industry leader in precision instrumentation for monitoring indoor air. Learn how to expand your IAQ investigations at tsi.com. Here's today's IAQ Radio Trivia question. On what are the names of the scientists who attended the first self-sustaining nuclear reaction inscribed? Back to you, Joe.
All right. Andre Desjarlais is the program manager for the Building Envelope and Materials Research Program at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. He's been involved in building envelope and materials research for over 45 years, first as a consultant and for the last 30 years at ORNL. Areas of his expertise include building envelope and material energy efficiency, moisture control, and durability.
Michael Robert Lubliner is a senior energy advisor at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. He previously worked at Washington State University Extension and their energy program as building science residential technical lead at the Washington State Energy Office. He's internationally recognized for his 35 years of significant contributions to residential building science, research and development of emerging technology, and building systems engineering. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Welcome, guys. Good to see you. Let's start with you, Mike. We, you and I have known each other over the years. We run into each other a lot at the Building Science Summer Camp, and I love watching the band play, and you're a big part of the band. And at the end of the show, we're going to have a little outro with one of your songs. And what I think is neat about it is it kind of consolidates the last 35 years of important lessons that you've learned while doing your work out at Washington State and as a part of the Washington State program. Can you kind of give listeners a little overview of the important things you've learned over that last 35 years?
Yeah, in general, I think that it's all about wisdom. I think the lab picked me up because of my PhD in schmoozing in the School of Hard Knocks. And I think that, like, as Joe says, wisdom is Joe Stiebrick, one of my mentors. Wisdom you get from change and from making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. The only people that really embrace change are babies with crap in their diapers. It's hard to change. People don't like that stuff. We're talking about change requires the same. If you can't just do the same thing over and over and expect different results. So really, you got to embrace change in a good way, and you will gain the wisdom from your mistakes, which we all have. There's the most important thing for me was learning from my peers and my mentors over the years. I was blessed that I had the opportunity to work with some really smart and people that were theoretical science as well as hands-on in the trenches, in the crawl spaces with the ductwork or whatever, or the insulation. And you got to get a broad set of people and peers to help you. Basically, this stuff is hard. I've been doing it for 35, 40 years. And if it was easy, we would have done it. So I'm happy in my career to be able to share my experience with you guys, and now really excited about the building science advisor and working with Andre, who's been a mentor of mine for years as well. I think we're all set. One last thing is that, I'm getting old. I'm ready to retire fairly soon. I want to be able to hand what I know, that baton, to that next generation to continue on this hard work. And I think that's really what makes it so that I can feel good about retiring, is that I know there's people out there that are going to take what we learned and learn more and make their own mistakes and affect positive change for our society and the people that live in our houses. So thank you.
Hey, our pleasure to have you, Mike. And Andre, I want to kind of first, if you wouldn't mind, introduce our audience to what you do there at the Building Envelope and Materials Research Program at Oak Ridge National.
So Joe, you said there weren't going to be any hard questions. I don't know. So let me take a shot of that. So Oak Ridge National Laboratory is one of the Department of Energy's research labs. There are some 20 DOE research labs scattered across the United States. The one in Oak Ridge, we'll talk a little bit about its history in a couple of minutes, has been around since World War II. Started as a bombs lab, transitioned into an energy lab in the 70s and after the oil embargoes, and now is a broad-based science lab. What we do is we look at trying to make building envelopes more energy efficient and more durable. So we work with private sector companies, manufacturers, architects, developing new materials, new ways of putting the materials together for buildings, both residential and commercial buildings, with the intent of trying to save the building owner money in terms of his energy bill, as well as make the building last as long as possible. So those are our focuses. Most of our work is funded through public funding, but we do work also with private sector companies. We have a very large experimental capability. We've been around since the building sector has been around since the 1970s, and so over the years we've gathered a lot of experimental capability, which we make available to private sector companies if they need to use those facilities to do research on their own. So try to make everybody's every time you open up your electric bill not cringe as much as you would if we weren't around.
Well, we've got some slides that you sent us that we'd like to kind of walk through, and keep in mind that a lot of our audience is listening on the podcast too. But I think this is interesting. You've got first start out with the history of Oak Ridge. You kind of covered that now, and maybe we'll go on to, here we go, 38 to 41. If you could run through these real quick, we could get an idea of what's been going on with our tax dollars.
Sure. So the I guess the history of the lab goes back to the late 1930s, and what caused the lab to be founded was that prior to World War II, there was the nuclear fission was first discovered, and this was in 1938, and unfortunately that was The discovery was made by German physicists. Shortly after the discovery, Germany annexed Czechoslovakia. And that was important because Czechoslovakia at that point in time had the largest known reserves of uranium ore. So Germany at that point now had a technology that they could use and a source of materials. And there was significant concern that this combination could lead to weapons of mass destruction. So Einstein was the German physicist who had moved to the US in the early 1930s, was urged by some of his German friends, his German physicist colleagues, to write to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to try to encourage the United States to begin to develop similar technology. And this was kind of peculiar because Einstein was effectively a pacifist, and FDR gets this letter in 1939. And of those of you who are history buffs, the United States at that point in time was thought of itself as an isolationist country. We had two big bodies of water on each side of us. The wars in Asia and the wars in Europe were not going to impact us. But a year and a half later, Pearl Harbor occurs and the U.S. is drawn into the war. And at that point, the government begins to reconsider that decision of not developing nuclear weapons. And if you could switch to the next slide, John. In early 1942, just a couple of months after Pearl Harbor, this gentleman, Kenneth McKellar, was called into Franklin Delano Roosevelt's office. And McKellar was the senator who was in charge of the Appropriations Committee. So when the U.S. government works, we have a budget that's set by Congress, another budget that's set in the Senate. Those two organizations get together, they develop a consensus, send that off to the president, and the president signs that into law. So McKellar was in charge of that joint committee. And so Roosevelt calls him into his office for a private session and says to him that he'd like to hide $1 billion of appropriations to develop super weapons. And $1 billion back in 1942 was a lot of money. So McKellar, being from Tennessee, has one famous line in history, and that is, "So where in Tennessee would you like to hide that money, sir?" So guess what? This is how Oak Ridge gets gets selected. There were several other reasons. There was a lot of electricity here in the early 1930s during the TVA was founded, and they had a lot of hydroelectric power, so there's a lot of electricity available. This was a sparsely populated part of the country at that point in time. Obviously, if there was an oops, they didn't want to take out a major portion of a population. So the picture here in the middle is a construction of what's referred to as a graphite reactor, which is the first full-scale nuclear reactor to go critical. And if you can imagine this, the funding was approved in February of 42, and in November of 43, in the middle of nowhere, this facility goes critical and begins to convert uranium to plutonium. So if you could switch to the next slide, sir. The plutonium that was developed at this facility was used in one of the bombs that was used in World War II. That research reactor was copied, and several copies of that reactor were built in Hanford, Washington, eastern part of Washington state. They produced the nuclear materials that ended World War II. So after the war, what does a bombs lab do? Well, they started to transfer into nuclear energy. One of the things that the lab also began doing is developing nuclear isotopes, which even today are used by the medical industry for nuclear medicine purposes. They figured out a way of transferring the energy from a nuclear reaction and producing electricity. That occurred in 1948, 1949. And then, so we continued kind of down this energy path till in the mid 70s when the oil embargo hit. All of a sudden, buildings became of significant interest, and the laboratory began to do quite a bit of work in the research in building energy efficiency. So next slide. So the lab today, 6,000 people. It's a very large lab. It's the largest of all of the Department of Energy labs. Has a budget of about $1.5 billion. If you ask our director what we do, he won't say buildings. What he will tell you is we have the world's fastest computer in the world. We host, earlier I think Michael was talking about the next generation of scientists. We host 3,000 visitors who will spend somewhere between a week and 3 years here to be immersed in science, trying to train the next generation of scientists. Still a lot of work being done in nuclear research. Just last week, there was a successful experiment looking at fusion energy, and maybe ORNL in sometime in the near future will once again be a nuclear lab. But today it's computing, materials development, and education. So that's a little quick snippet about the lab.
Interesting, very interesting. I appreciate that. We also have some photos from Cliff and Pete. Took a visit to the lab a few years back, and we've been trying ever since to get this show organized. We finally got you here, guys, so it's great to have you. When they went, they were treated very, very well. Cliff, you want to kind of run us through these real quick?
Well, Pete got top billing, of course, because he made the arrangements, so on and so forth. But no, it was great. They were very, very accommodating, and just the opportunity to meet the people, get the history, learn about programs, that they're currently working on, and then kind of take us on a tour and show us, everything from a building that was built, I guess printed, on a
3D
printer.
Yeah,
3D printing. I had to make a building out of it, and I remember these water heaters, really high tech water heaters, and at that time, I think only one or two of the companies had actually licensed the technology, and now you go to the Home Depot and you see that type of equipment, and then just the size
heat pump water heaters, right?
Just the size of some of the equipment that they have there. Some takes up entire buildings. They had this climate simulator, for testing walls and windows and so on and so forth. It was just really, really amazing. It was really, really high tech stuff. So great experience. Something I don't think I'll ever forget.
I think the last photo might show that we got refrigerators. They test those. Go ahead, Cliff,
water heaters.
John, give me one more. I believe that's a 3D printed house, right?
3D printed building. Yeah, amazing.
What is that? Concrete or
plastic?
Right? Right?
That's plastic.
It's plastic.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, the key thing we were really going to talk about today is the building science advisor. And I think what we'd like to do is just kind of jump right into it. Maybe Mike or Andre, whoever feels more comfortable running us through. Let's go to the next set of slides. First, what was the spark that got this building science advisor program started? Andre?
Well, I think there's in the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of changes in how we build homes, and builders and contractors in general are adverse to change, and it's understandable. Whenever you try something different, there's risk associated with that. And what we were trying to do is we want to encourage people to build more energy efficiently, with improved air tightness, using new building materials that probably have lower carbon levels than the materials that we're using today. But unless we can waylay some of the concerns, then I think there's some difficulty in getting people to adapt to a lot of these new technologies. So the purpose of this tool was to try to instill some level of confidence in the use of some of these new technologies. We kind of view it as kind of like having an expert in your pocket. it's always good to be able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody who is very knowledgeable in this and say, well, I'm going to try this. What do you think? Is this going to work? And if the expert is familiar with that, he can give you an answer. What the intent here is that this replaces the expert. What we've tried to do is take all of the information, whether it be expert advice or information in the building codes or field experiments that have been performed, as well as computer simulations, and created a tool that will examine the construction that you're considering. If you're looking at a new construction, or if you're looking at a retrofit construction, it'll recommend some ways of improving the energy efficiency of those structures without creating a problem from a durability problem. So that's kind of where it kind of got it all started. So if you can switch to the next slide. I think I might actually talk through a couple of these already. Need to thank my colleague in Washington, Eric Whirling. He has a lot of faith in us and has sponsored the bulk of this work. And of course, I want to thank Pete, Joe, and Cliff. And I put Pete first because he's the one who visited us, right? That's what you said, right? So we appreciate the opportunity to join you folks this afternoon and share with you what we're up to. So,
and I understand, Andre, that a lot of this ties into other DOE sites like the Build America site, et cetera.
Yeah, the Department of Energy has a number of other national laboratories who are working, basically working in tandem. Building America, a lot of that activity is undertaken by one of our sister labs, Pacific Northwest Labs. And they have a website called the Building America Solutions Center, which has a repository of lots and lots of information. So you can actually access the Building Science Advisor from their website as well as ours. We try to work in tandem. We all have different areas of specialty. We tend to be more researchy and do a lot of experimental work. P&L tends to be a little bit better in terms of doing field demonstrations and accumulation of data and information to share with the user community. So we all have our strengths, and we try to collaborate as much as we can. But as I was mentioning earlier, as there's this concern about taking risk, and every time you change the way you build, you're increasing the risk because you don't have the experience of doing it in the past. So the least risky thing is to do exactly what you did yesterday. If what you did yesterday worked, then it should work today. So what we're trying to do is encourage people to try things differently and to give them a means that they could get basically instant access to a consultant or the information that would reside in the head of a consultant or an expert. But now what we've done is we've taken all of that information, we've siphoned it out of their brains and stuck it into a web-based tool called the Building Science Advisor. Next slide, please. So, why is this so? Well, I think none of our the homes that our parents lived in really ever had very many moisture-related problems or durability problems. But if you look at houses that were built 40 or 50 years ago to compare them to what we build today, they're substantially different. The interior sheathings, we've gone from plaster to gypsum board. Windows used to be, single pane, and they used to basically be dehumidifiers. Now we've got fairly energy efficient triple pane windows. Air tightness of buildings is substantially different. So Joe, there's a picture of your house, right? A lock home with all of the air leakage that is associated with that type of construction. Today, we sheathe our exterior of our buildings, and we try very hard to reduce the amount of air exchange between the interior and exterior of buildings. All of these things tend to make the building a little bit more sensitive to moisture, and where we never really had to even think about durability 40, 50 years ago because our buildings were were self-healing, but they weren't energy efficient. So now what we need to do is be both energy efficient and durable at the same time, and that's much more of a challenge. So next slide, please.
So the more energy efficient you try to make it, the more potential there are for other issues to crop up.
Yeah, what you do is, air moving through the wall, air leakage tends to dry walls very nicely. So as we tighten up the wall system, we basically eliminate that drying mechanism that used to be available to us. And so it's not that necessarily the materials are more sensitive, but what we've done is we've reduced the ability of those of the systems to dry. So this led us to developing this tool. Again, I kind of underline the word instant. I think a lot of times, you're on a job site and somebody comes up to you and says, well, I was supposed to sheet this with polyiso, but all I could find is polystyrene. Is that okay? Well, what you could do is if you have your computer with you, go to the building science advisor, lay it out, substitute one material for the other, and determine whether that's an adequate substitution. And you can get the answer once you learn how to use the tool in less than a minute. The tool's web-based. We hope to develop an app at some point, but we haven't kind of gotten that far. It's built around what we refer to as an expert system, and I'll talk a little bit about what an expert system is. And finally, it's can be used both for designing new and existing wall systems. So if you're looking at constructing a new building, or the building's been completely damaged, you have to completely gut the system, and you're going to start effectively afresh, except maybe for the studs being in place. It can be used for evaluating a recommended change for that type of construction. Next slide. So what an expert system is you basically have three parts of it. The user interface is simply the screen where you tell the program, or you tell the tool what you want to do. If I'm building if I'm renovating a building, I'm going to say, okay, I'm in New Orleans. I've got a stick frame structure, and I want to use this type of sheathing, this type of insulation, this amount of continuous insulation, this type of cladding. This is where the user is basically talking to the tool and inputting the information he requires the tool to have. The tool will then take that information and convert it into something that the tool will understand. If you think about all the possible combinations you can have, there are hundreds of different claddings, and there are dozens of different sheathings and hundreds of different insulations. We can't keep track of all of those. So what we do is we kind of put them together. We effectively bin them. We treat all fibrous insulations basically the same. So the tool is somewhat agnostic in terms of whether it's cellulose or fiberglass, for example. But it will differentiate between cellulose and foam because the moisture handling capabilities of those different materials are important. So we combine some of these things to reduce the number of combinations, and that's what's in the inference engine. And then there's a huge database. There's probably about 50,000 different rules in the database. It's effectively will take the user information, look through the rule set, see which rules apply to the system that this gentleman is, this person is wanting to examine, and give it the results from that simulation or that rule that's in the database. And those rules come from, as I said earlier, smart people, codes, computer simulations, field experimentations. We've combined all of that information and install that into what's referred to as the knowledge base. Next page. So kind of told you all this already. We could skip this one and go to the next. So one of the things that the tool, kind of proud of about the tool, is if you input a system and the tool says this is not a good idea, what it does is it gives you guidance as to how to change that system. So not only will it tell you is it good, bad, or I'm not sure, it'll tell you if it is bad, well, here's what we think you can do to make it better. And built into the tool, there are all of these guidance information sheets, and I believe there are about 9 of these that cover different topics associated with durability. And at the bottom of this tool, if you want even further information, you can see references for further reading kind of listed at the bottom. You can then go and onto the net and find much more specific information on this specific topic. So what we've tried to do is put in one place all of, several levels of information. First, here's what the tool thinks in terms of your design. Here's some general information that will make it better if you have a problem. And if you want even further detail and further information, here's a whole family of references that will help you understand and remediate that problem more completely. Next page. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael now. Michael will kind of give you kind of a quick tour of the tool. So Michael, all yours.
Thanks, Andre. All right, so I'm really excited about this building science advisor because it really, as Andre said, dials down to the important things. And if you go to the Solutions Center, I don't know if any of you have been to the DOE Solutions Center, it's an excellent source of all kinds of information on building science in the residential area. However, you end up, at least I do, when I start in there, I start to go down these squirrel paths to these rat holes and get lost in what I was originally there for. And what building science allows you to do is after you've specified the assessment of a wall system, which is what the tool's about, then it takes you to, as Andre said, the best resources so you can learn and not have to spend a lot of time trying to find stuff. It helps you find it. So the first thing here is the homepage. And as Andre said, we have new construction, and we're proud now that we've done the retrofit construction. And this stuff's going to get really important as the Inflation Reduction Act starts to pump resources, funding to people that own homes that want to rehab them or remodel them, and builders that are building beyond energy codes to Energy Star. They get $2,500 for that. They build to a zero energy ready, $5,000 a home. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people that don't know building science to learn it with the Building Science Advisor. The next, let's see here. I'm going to just surf down there. And then basically, it basically allows you to go to different components. And we're going to focus today on the walls, which is where the analysis tool lies. So that's kind of the home page. Then we go into pre-assessments. And basically, you can go to information on roofs, exterior walls, windows and attachments to those windows. And then it does some stuff on basements and the whole idea of air tightness and the fundamentals of build tight, ventilate right. So it's a kind of the pre-assessment provides you with some resources right away, talks about building air tightness and some resources from the Air Barrier Association where you can learn more about testing. So, if you want to go there, you can go there and learn more about it. That's the people that are certified and trained to install air barriers and test them. There's some information on air barriers here. Here's one of Joe Stiebrick's classic research reports, and every one of Joe's research reports that you've ever seen over the years is dialed into this expert system. And so here's an example now for Building Science Corporation research on air barriers. And then in addition to that, we were talking about the next generation of building science folks, whether they're on site or whether they're in the lab and everything in between. And so they have links to the Solar Decathlon, which is an awesome program, and some information.
Welcome to the Solar Decathlon Building Science Education Series. I'm Walter Salini, and in this episode...
Hey, while you're doing that, Mike, what we're going to do is we're going to break real quick for our halftime, maybe thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back with Mike Lubliner, Luby. Our marquee sponsor is First On Site, your trusted full-service disaster recovery and property restoration company at firstonsite.com. Our association sponsors are ACGIH, Advancing Careers of Professionals in Environmental Health, Industrial Hygiene, and Safety, interested in defining their science. ACGIH.org. AIHA, Healthy Workplaces, A Healthier World. AIHA.org. The Cleaning Industry Research Institute. See more deeply through science and research. CIRI science.org. The IICRC, a nonprofit standards development and certifying body for the cleaning and restoration industry, IICRC.org. Industry sponsors are AEML Laboratories, free shipping, great pricing, same-day results with no rush fee, AEMLinc.com. Particles Plus, feature-rich particle counters and air quality instrumentation. Count on us. ParticlesPlus.com. TSI Inc., an industry leader in precision instrumentation for monitoring indoor air. Learn how to expand your IAQ investigations. TSI.com. Sunbelt Rentals, availability, reliability, and ease for all your IAQ and restoration needs at sunbeltrentals.com. April Air, healthy home, April, AIRE.com. And Healthy Indoors Magazine, a free online magazine for industry professionals and consumers, healthyindoors.com. All right, we're back with the second half. We've got Mike Lubliner and we've got Andre Desjarlais. Mike, let's keep going. By the way, I want everyone to know, John and I both went in last night and played with this and put in our own walls. Very interesting. And I think what we'll do if we have time as this goes on is put in an example. But Mike, why don't you go ahead and continue where you were left off?
All right. So I was talking a little bit about the solar decathlon. There's all kinds of YouTube things there for young folks to learn about building science and get involved through the universities in the solar decathlon. It's a great education program. It teaches STEM, all the important fundamentals for the future engineers. We've got the whole building design guide that's done by the Army Corps of Engineers, and the building enclosure, again, back to John Straub, Joe Stiebrick, some of my mentors over the years that important technical stuff for architects, engineers, designers, equipment manufacturers, building system manufacturers. It's all right there. If the builder wants to know why you're speccing this stuff, you can show them. We're going to reduce your risk. So on that note, let me see if I can move that. Let's go back to the home. We're on the pre-assessments page now. And what this will allow you to do is kind of move along and go to the through and give you a little tour of the overall website. So this one does, why we do wall retrofits, and talks about all the wall implications of walls, walks you through before you start a retrofit, doing a pre-assessment, some really good links to identifying causes of moisture, durability. We talked a little bit about as we get homes retrofitted more efficiently or built more efficiently, the risks can go up if you don't do things right. And as Joe would call it, Joe Stiebrick, there's no free thermodynamic lunch with energy efficiency. Housing durability studies, there's some great stuff here. And this gives you just a quick tour to dial down to the stuff important to you. Then we do the assessments, and you can go through and identify links to moisture problems. There's case studies here. Let's see if we go, if this one will work. Actually, this is just the tour right now. So let me go down and keep coming. Here's the identify different moisture problems, and then documents that will come up that will tell you about both what are the dynamics, what are the case studies, what are the problems, what about mold, building enclosures, all this stuff. And it's vetted by reputable research scientists and practitioners in the real world. And so it's really a good tour here to get through and spend an hour with your client going through this stuff. Then the way then you go into the actual assessments, where you can go in and you can, as Andre said, put an enclosure, a wall enclosure in, and you can select different climate zones, anything from Arctic to Miami. And then from there, once you've got the climate zones, and here's an example of the climate zones, then you can go ahead and start your assembly. So your wall assembly construction, you can pick either a new wall, an existing wall. You can go in, you can pick off, okay, what kind of exterior cladding? Am I going to have a ventilated, drained space behind the cladding? If I'm using a continuous insulation or not. I've got a bunch of opportunities to look at different types of insulation and their impact on the dynamics of the wall. How thick is that insulation? What is the house wrap, the weather resistant barrier that we've learned and codes now required so that we can keep wind driven rain and moisture out, and along with flashing systems? What kind of exterior sheathing is there? So you got house wrap, permeable, non-permeable house wrap. You got exterior sheathing, what is the building sheathed in? And then what type of wall are we talking about? Are we talking about 2x6, 2x4 CMU, grouted masonry, steel frame? Gives you all the options to pick and customize your wall. Then in the cavity of that wall, what kind of insulation is in there? And closed cell, flash and bat, fiberglass, cellulose, open cell. It gives it, as Andre said, based on the properties of the product of the assembly component. Then what kind of interior vapor retarder is there behind the drywall or part of the drywall? Is there any? Is it a poly or aluminum foil, or is it craft paper? And you can go in and pick which one you want. Then, of course, what kind of finish is there? Is it latex paint? Is it just oil-based? And so that's the inputs. And it will create a wall assembly for you. Here's one with some polyethylene and some vinyl siding. All right, so we go down and we cruise. Now that we've got the climate and we've got the wall assembly described, we can go in. And as Andre said, you can do new construction example. If you were in a damaged flood zone or something like that, you can go in and say you're pulling off just the exterior or some wind damage, and you can go in. You can go in from the interior and evaluate an interior retrofit or a gut rehab where you have to tear the whole thing out, open it up. So you got the options here. I think this audience might be real interested in the gut rehab tool. We'd love to hear back from you on how useful the tool is as helping you to explain to your clients the importance of doing it right when you fix the gut, when you do the gut rehab. So it talks about new wall construction, and it gives you like gives you a little gauge. And there's for example, for hot mixed climates. I won't get into the details of the example, but it shows you here new construction. You're in the good durability classification. And as you start to change these components or change the climate, it may put you in all the way up into the failure mode. And this is, again, a new construction example. It also provides you an assessment of how you are compared to the ICC energy code. So this is the wall assembly again, and the risk and the R value that you might need for codes. So that's kind of a little bit of the pre-assessment tour. You can go right in, and we could do an example here.
Let's do one, Mike.
Yeah, okay.
I want to give you, maybe I'll give you the inputs and then we'll look at the output, because I've got two great examples. Let's go with the typical Pittsburgh home, John Faith's home in the Pittsburgh area. We're talking about 5A. So we've got a cold and wet climate. We input that. Now we go next. And what's next up here? I can't see that. Okay, the type of construction. Let's put brick exterior cladding.
All right.
Brick or stone. Now we go to the next, which is going to be do we have an airspace in there? We're going to say yes, drained and ventilated. Although I think that's a stretch in the Pittsburgh area, but I'm going to give them drained and ventilated anyway. Then we do not have any continuous exterior insulation there, so we would choose none. And let's go to the exterior. What would be next on the list here, Mike?
It's be the water resistive barrier, because since we don't have any continuous insulation, it just, you don't need to open that one up. There's no.
We're going to put house wrap for that one. House wrap building paper.
House wrap. All right. And then what kind of sheathing is there?
Sheathing is going to be fiberboard. It's probably some old Celotex or something like that, 60s.
Yeah. And then we're talking 2x4 16-inch on center.
2x4 16, yes, sir. Fiberglass.
Fiberglass in the wall.
In the wall.
And you got any
interior paper barrier? None. And latex drywall with latex. Oh wait, John, do you have plaster or drywall?
Drywall.
Yeah. Drywall. Is it latex or oil paint?
I've put on latex.
Latex. Good. And boom, right. It's that simple. Now we find out based on the skip the new. There we go. And this is pretty common for a house built in the 60s. It's risky as far as moisture durability goes, and I'll bet the energy efficiency is not real good either. It's below what new construction would be. Let's do another one real quick, Mike. This is one that we did rehab here at Indian Lake, so we got the same inputs as far as the climate zone. It's 5A.
Okay. And what kind of clad? Same cladding?
We got brick. We've got fiberboard.
Uh-huh.
No exterior sheathing or no exterior insulation, no continuous insulation. Okay. We've got some house wrap.
Uh-huh.
Fiberboard. This is again 2x4x16, but this time let's put in closed cell foam, as was recommended by by a good friend of both of ours here. I wanted to make sure it would work. I called Joe to make sure. All right, interior vapor retarder, none.
Yeah, just look over at the diagram. See, that's there, none. And then we go cavity insulation, closed cell foam. It does a little graphics for you. Sorry.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't notice that the other day. All right. Interior vapor retarder, we have none.
Okay.
And it's latex paint, drywall with latex paint. And I think is that the last input?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now we'll see the difference that makes when we have. All right. So it's giving me a little risky. When I had it in last night, it had me in the pass area, but maybe I missed something there, but that's okay.
Did we add something here that generally it wasn't much in the way of thermal performance? Let's see on the CC. Yeah. Let's go back and look. So this is one of the things that you got to always double check, but I've had some that, and Andre, you could probably explain some that were non-intuitive. Like I was working in a cold climate zone, and I was putting things like CI on. So let's put in an inch of poly on that wall when you reside, for example, and that same wall. And let's see if that gives
you. Joe.
Yes, sir.
Just a good text question came, and how do you take into account the impact of interior air movement close to the wall?
Yeah, this is an excellent question. So, Andre, do you want to touch on that one, or I could probably take a stab and you tell me if I'm on board. So, what this does is this assumes that the wall is being done correctly. In other words, you built tight and you're ventilating right and you're testing. If you have any situation where say you were in the pass area, oh, I passed, but Joey Bag of Donuts or Bubba factor happens and they screw it up, you're going to end up moving closer into the risky area. So it's really important that you understand that this is really looking at parameters, but it doesn't model defects. It assumes that you've correctly done the air barrier and that you've done the other stuff that we were talking about. And I think that that's a really good question that we have been needing to address in terms of, and why we link you to the resources so that you get those quality assurances built into the program. So specifically, Andre, I know that there's some moisture loading assumptions from vapor pressure drive from inside the house into the wall. And those are considered, but it's not really looking at imperfections due to things that we can't model.
We still have Andre on?
Yeah, no, my camera just burped, but I'm still here.
No problem.
Yeah, that's correct. One of the difficulties of looking at air movement and wall systems is not only is it a question of how much air is moving through the wall, but it also is impacted by how the air is moving through the wall. And it's so hard to generalize those sorts of solutions in this type of tool. So we're going with the assumption that everything else is being equal. You don't have substantial flows of air. If you do, you're going to have a moisture related problem. So you need to control the air. And then this tool is helping you differentiate between the different material components that are going to be included in the construction of the wall. And sorry, my camera died, so I think it's running again.
No problem, Andre.
I'm here.
Good.
Mike, I think one of the things I left out was the air tightness of the wall, which was pretty airtight. So maybe that was why we came up with what we did. But is WUFI part of this analysis?
Yeah, I'll steal that question. One of the inputs when we constructed this tool, we tried to identify all of the most common construction practices. The tool can't cover everything, so we tried to limit it to 90% of what's being built, and so that's why when you look at some of the constructions, you don't see structural insulated panels or insulated concrete forms, or as we said earlier, logs, solid wood block logs, or CLTs. But we then took a look at what's available in the codes, what's available in the literature, what are the opinions of people who have written on the topic, and then when we found some blanks in the database, we backfilled those blanks by using hydrothermal modeling. So of the 50,000 rules, I would guess that probably 40,000 of them are from WUFI types of analyses. So there is the opinions of the experts and where they haven't spoken or where they haven't written specifically on. We filled in those blanks using the tools that they generally use. So
excellent.
It's a combination of everything.
Yeah. Well,
all right. Well, Luby, you have one more thing you wanted to?
Yeah. I went in and did a little change. I got rid of the foam and went in and put I put the foam instead of in the cavity. I put an inch of foam on the exterior, and you got really good passing grades there, and a really good high performance wall. So anyway, yeah, I mean, this is pretty much it. Here are the resources that it gives you information on. And then you can open up the PDF. That was the stuff that Andre was showing for any types of components: trap moisture, drainage plane, air barrier, inward vapor drive, outward vapor drive, depending on cooling, heating climates, open vapor walls, and CMU. So all the case studies then are here for you to look at based on long Building America Solution Center history of research. And that's pretty much the tour for you. Here's some great different, and there's plenty more of these that'll dial down based on your climate. These are kind of some Massachusetts ones. And that's pretty much it, I'd say, in terms of the tour. And I had a few takeaways. I don't know where you want to go from here.
Well, let's go to the roundup, and we'll come back and we'll ask a few final questions.
Okay.
The Roundup is brought to you by April Air, providing healthy humidity, ventilation, and air purity solutions for new and existing homes. April Air, healthy air, healthy home at aprilaire.com. All right, Cliff, let me turn it over to you first. Any final questions for our guests or thoughts?
I guess it's more of a final thought than anything else. With all of this theft of technology, by China, I was just wondering whether we welcome people from China, into the lab and, let them look under the hood.
The work that we do is for everybody. And if we're interested in reducing energy consumption, this is a global problem, not just a U.S. problem.
Okay.
And frankly, buildings in the U.S. perform somewhat better than a lot of third world countries. And DOE has a lot of programs trying to encourage countries like India that have mass building programs to build more energy efficiently. And oh, by the way, maybe you want to import some U.S. technology, but that's a side card. I think that the first mission is to get them to build more energy efficiently. So these tools are on the web. It's for everybody. The structures we have are kind of North American-ish type of construction, right? You don't see too much stick frame construction in, say, Eastern Europe. So it is somewhat limiting in that respect, but the more people that use this tool, the happier we would be.
I'm not concerned about the tool. I was more concerned about the lab itself.
Oh, well, you remember what you probably, being a U.S. citizen, didn't really go through the ringer. Rules regarding security changed a lot after 2001. We were much more open. People could drive basically right up to the buildings prior to 2001, and if they had a pass, they could get in. Now we stop people 3 or 4 miles away from the campus, and if you're not on a list to get in, you don't. Foreign nationals it takes about a month to get a foreign national into the lab, and they actually go through a background search before they're allowed into the lab. So there is more security today than there was 20 years ago. But yet we still allow people from foreign countries to come. We allow them to work here. Sometimes they're limited in terms of the buildings that they can access, but there are levels of security, but we try to be open to as many people as we can, and as many societies as possible.
Some years back there was a big issue in regards to lie detector tests, for people in the labs and so on and so forth. Do they still do the lie detector stuff today, or they kind of dropped that?
I don't remember that. Nobody's ever asked me a question, so I've never undergone that test. I don't think so. What they do is they do background searches, primarily on foreign nationals. U.S. citizens don't go through.
Well, I'll send you some information on it, actually.
Okay.
No problem.
I wonder if we invented the lie detector. That's why they were trying to use it.
Well, I guess the guy that invented the lie detector also invented, what was it, Wonder Woman, I think, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's true.
So today is the 75th anniversary of the discovery of the transistor.
Okay.
So that was in 1947, I believe. And just imagine what life would be if we didn't have transistors, right? We would not be talking via computer right now.
Well, it seemed to me you smiled when I asked you the trivia question. Seeing how no one answered it, go ahead and answer it.
Well, well, it's interesting that I don't know the actual names, but I know where to go to find it. I think Weinberg is one of them.
That wasn't the name. It wasn't the name, but what did they write the names on?
Oh, that I don't know. I do not know.
You were very, very close to your answer. The name that you gave was very, very close.
A bottle of wine?
Correct. On the label of a bottle of Chianti.
Wow. A man after my own heart.
There you go.
What I can tell you is a little sidelight of the history is that when they first loaded up the reactor with fuel, the physicists and the scientists determined that it was going to take 96 hours for this to go critical and begin to develop, produce uranium. And so they all went home for the weekend. This was a Friday afternoon, thinking that nothing was going to happen till the following Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday. Then on Saturday, apparently all the temperature gauges started going crazy, and it still didn't have a phone system built into this area. You can imagine this was just rural.
Right.
And so they had to send a gentleman by car to go to the homes of the two major physicists and say, whoa, what's happening? We don't know what's happening. It's going to show up. And there's actually a large painting of this guy in a 1930s car driving up to a small, tiny house, knocking on the door to wake up the scientists. You better show up because something serious is happening. And it just happened to be, they were only off by a factor of 2 in terms of their calculation. So it was a lot of science by the pants strap. It was, they were doing something that nobody had ever done, and it showed.
Yep. Well, let's go, Mike. I want to get your final thoughts before I bring in Pete Consigli.
All right. So just a little wrap up of the kind of things a question came in about air tightness and everything. The big 10 are you drain the rain on the plane, you're going to save some cash. You got a flash. Think about overhangs. Build it tight. And if you build it tight, make sure you've tested it. And so you know the tightness of it. Make sure that you ventilate right. If you're going to do one, you got to do the other and test it again. Then, know what kind of perm rating and know what vapor retarders. And then, of course, the bulk moisture, the perimeter drains that Joe talks about that get water that collect if you don't have them at the basements, and flooding, all the things related to flooding that you guys know. Get that right. And then don't do stupid things, because Joe will go ching ching. That's pretty much it on my end. I think that the building science advisor dials you down to those messages with credible information and gives you a tool for assessing the what ifs. So there is no free thermodynamic lunch, as Joe says. So we need better tools and better people that understand this stuff. That's what I have to say.
I really enjoy the tool. Gives you a lot of great options. You can switch from one type of insulation to another, or from one type of exterior cladding to another. You get a real nice idea of whether you're on the right path or not. Before we go, Pete, any final thoughts from you?
Well, listen, you guys did a great job of the timing. You're going through everything. You had a lot of moving parts, and all the plates were spinning. Unfortunately, nothing hit the floor. I noticed that, so I got a couple things to close with. I noticed that Ed Light in the very first thing in the chat log talked about, when he was 3 years old, there was a picture of him in front of the nuclear reactor in Oak Ridge. I think I can actually beat that one. So my freshman year in college, in my first freshman year class on calculus math, I had a professor at my school that was part of the Manhattan Project at Oak Ridge. Built the atom bomb. And his thesis to get his PhD was at such a high security level, there was nobody qualified to review it that had that clearance. They just had to give him his PhD. Now that's a true story. I didn't make that up. And he was an egghead kind of guy. I won't say his name or anything, but he had the little rim glasses. But he was a brilliant man, and he was able to take these really complex things and make them fairly understandable for a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds. Listen, the only thing I'll say is, Joe Stiebrick had so much to do over the years, through all the summer camp and the relationship that were forged in the last 25 years through that, and working within the parameters of Oak Ridge. And obviously he's got enough attaboys throughout the day. But those of you that want to really listen to Joe and John Tooley and Gary Nelson and these pioneers on building science, so to make sure you see right there, I got right on there, go visit the website climatezone.1. That's ONE, not the number one. And Joe and the whole crew, they're going to be down here in Southwest Florida in January, and it's going to be a great, terrific event. And we got all the stuff and all the gear ready to recognize and honor that. And you can see here our friends at Tamlin, they got the co-branding on the back. So hope to see a bunch of you down there calling in from Climate Zone 1. Let me tell you, it's a little chilly here today, guys. I'm not going to get any sympathy for you guys up in the cold climate, but like it's in the 60s down here in Florida, and that's kind of cool for us. You know, we may have to put a sweater on, you know, but fortunately we don't need any shovels for shoveling any kind of snow and ice. Hasn't gotten that bad yet. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the blog because Cliff, he does such a terrific job, and make sure you get all those links, the PowerPoint, everything's going to be in there for all the listeners. And, you know, we get a lot more people that kind of download the blogs and listen to the show afterwards because they can't always call in at 12 noon, but we had a good little group today. And the one guy called in from Dubai and he apologized for having to leave a little early. Now, hey, Andre, I know where you're going to be at 9 o'clock on this Sunday morning. You're going to be in front of your television watching to see whether France can defend a World Cup title against the Argentinians, who probably are sentimental favorites because this is going to be Messi's last World Cup. So it should be a very exciting World Cup. I'll predict now, I think the final score is going to be 1-0, but I don't know who's going to have the 1 and who's going to have the 0. So without that, Andre and Luby, thank you very much for taking the time and working hard to put this together. On behalf of all the growing list of loyal listeners, as Radio Joe would say, we really appreciate this information, and maybe we'll do something else. We'll have a follow-up show next year, see what kind of interest that we get on it. So thank you very much, Joe, Cliff. Signing off. We'll turn it back to you guys.
Thank you, Pete. Hey, by the way, at the end of the show, our outro today will be done by by one of our guests today. So this is pretty rare. Mike Lubliner is going to do a little final outro. But before we go, I want to thank our guests for this week, Andre Desjarlais, Michael Lubliner of the Oak Ridge National Lab, my co-host, the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. John, you got to have faith at the controls. Our fantastic sponsors, our loyal audience. We appreciate you all. We'll be back. We're going to take Christmas and New Year's off. We'll be back the first week in January with another Moisture Mob show. And actually, we've got 2 in a row. We've got a lot of interesting shows coming up, set up for January, and look forward to having everybody back here next year. But so let's finish with a great little song put together by Mike Luby. Let's call him Luby today. We've even got the lyrics.
In the morning and you drive your car to Logan, take a 747 to a meeting. You make a lot of money and the people think you're funny and the crowd really takes a beating. You got some great lines and you like to drink fine wine. Costs more than a sports car, you say. If your clients get annoyed, you will be self-employed. An Aspen vacation, let's play. Building signs business, Joe's way. Building signs business, now what did he say? Building signs business, drain the rain. Building signs business on the plane. Building signs business, save some cash. Building signs business, you better flash. Building signs business, no overhang. Building signs business, no yin just yang. Building signs business, build it tight. Building signs business, on site right. Building signs business, ventilated right. Building signs business, tested on site right. Building signs business, no virgin poly. Building signs business, a Canadian folly. Building signs business, it don't rot or fall. Building signs business, Joe's perfect wall. Building signs business, no perimeter drain. Building signs business, no Joe go insane. Building signs business, know your pump.
Building science business and you will love. Building science business, don't do stupid things. Building science business, or Joe goes ching ching. Building science business, Joe's way. Building science business, that's what the BSA said.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reel saying thanks for listening.